Hello. I'm so confused. Hold on a second, please. Professional stream going on here. During the intro, I heard my intro music playing over the top of itself, and it was very much confusing myself to the point where I muted it because I was concerned that it was playing twice. I then proceeded to ask my guest if he had the YouTube page open, and guess what? It was me. So I was listening to my intro video while trying to talk to you and introduce the show, and now I feel like an absolute ass. However, we're going to get things kicked off today because things go wrong all the time, and it's usually my fault, as I always say on this stream. So today, hello, welcome back to the Rawkode Academy. My name is David Flanagan. You will know me as Rawkode, and today we are taking a look at Kubescape. It is a Kubernetes open source tool providing multi-cloud Kubernetes single pane of glass. As we say in the title graphic, we're going to show you how to secure your clusters like the NSA. Now, as you can tell by my mistakes in the first minus 30 seconds of the show, I am not smart enough to guide us through this today. However, we are joined by someone who is. So let me please introduce our guest, Ben from RBAC. Hey man, how's it going?
Hi David. Thanks for having me.
See, you must be feeling very confident now that I've made all the mistakes in the first 10 seconds, right? That takes the pressure off.
Yeah, well, that's just the beginning of the show. You will see my mistakes in a few minutes.
All right, awesome. Well, thank you so much for joining us today. For anyone who's not familiar with you, doesn't follow you on Twitter, can you share a little bit of information about Ben?
So yeah, okay, I will try to keep it short. Okay, so I'm a cybersecurity veteran. Okay, coming into the cloud native space for a few years now. Mostly, we're working in Armo, which is a startup we've founded 2 years ago. We're working on Kubernetes security and improving the security of applications in Kubernetes. And what I can tell you by myself that I'm the VP engineering here, but as a small startup, most of the things you're doing everything. So you're also washing the dishes at the office and everything. So I'm a father of four, and I love to play chess.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing all that with us. I always like to ask a question when we have security focused people on, and is Kubernetes secure by default? What's your opinions on that?
So actually, this is a really good question. Okay, I know that you've asked someone else, but this is something always. First of all, I'm a fan. Okay, so of your show and Kubernetes, I have to tell you that one of the most interesting things about Kubernetes that Kubernetes really gave the people behind Kubernetes gave a real thought of security. Okay, and this doesn't mean that Kubernetes is secure by itself. Okay, because there is nothing which is secure by itself today. But I really do think that many things, okay, for many years, okay, which we've been laughing at different technologies, okay, web servers, CGI beans, if you remember, and stuff like that. Okay, that how funny was that? How they didn't thought of security from the beginning, or not just from the beginning, in the middle either. But in Kubernetes, they really gave it a serious thought, and many things are in there. This doesn't mean that everything is fine, but this is really good. I mean, it's really great to work with Kubernetes because you feel that really the thought is there and the good start is there.
Yeah, definitely, 100%. I think, when people talk to me, typically they're migrating to Kubernetes, and they're doing that with security is one of those tenets that they really hope to get because, hey, it's in a container, right? Like, what bad things can happen if I schedule everything in containers? But as with all tools, every tool in the world, is that it's easy to go down a path of misconfiguration and breaking stuff, or even just downright ignoring best practices and going into the security context and going wild on it, right? Like, it all comes down to individual use case. And I think that's why I'm really excited to kind of introduce people to Kubescape today, because it's going to bring a lot of these misconfigurations and bad practices front and center and show people, like, maybe you need to look at why you're doing this and maybe there's a better way to it. So can you I've said Kubescape like 3 times now, so we might as well tell people what it is. Can you give us the description of what is Kubescape, please?
So Kubescapes is our open source project. Okay, we started like in the last summer, which is a tool scanning your cluster against misconfigurations at the beginning, and not just saying in the beginning, okay, because we have a long way to go and we have many exciting things going on. But the really basic is checking your cluster and checking your YAML files and HELM charts before deployment, checking them against the best practices, security best practices. And you mentioned NSA, and really NSA was a really good starting point for us, okay, because NSA-CISA framework was released somewhere in August, I think, where actually NSA created this great document, okay, of telling people what can be the problems with Kubernetes misconfigurations, and recreated a standard, okay, practical standard, and I'm telling practical because many of you might know that there are many other standards like PCI, SOC 2, and stuff like that, which are giving you very high level, ideas, okay, of what should be the goal, but doesn't give, for us engineers, they don't really give, explicit, instructions what to actually do with it. And NSA, I think they took this to the next level because they actually told you things like, guys, okay, encrypt your etcd, okay, which is, it's something that the engineer can do with it, okay. So and we created Kubescape, okay, around these frameworks, and literally we saw, the very big early success, okay, with it, and we added more frameworks around Kubescape ever since, and it really, we got, I cannot, emphasize it enough. We got a huge love back, okay, from the community, and we got awesome feedback, okay, on how people are using this tool, and how it helps them to find their security issues, even before, but also within the cluster, and how this improves their security posture.
Awesome. Yeah, I can understand why there's a lot of love for Kubescape, having been playing with it and poking at it over the last kind of couple of weeks. Like, I'm really excited to dive into it more and share that with everybody. So yeah, definitely. We do have our first question from Moz. So if you are watching us live, we do encourage questions. Please get them into the chat and we'll do our best to answer them. Moz, your question is very generic, and I'll give Ben the opportunity to answer it. But if you want to follow up with maybe a few more specifics about what your friends are struggling with, that would be great. But Moz does ask, many of my cybersecurity friends are struggling to adopt Kubernetes and cloud native. Do you have any advice for them?
Wow.
That was quite a wide net there, but
yeah. So I think I understand where Moz is coming from, and this is a pain, I think, that many of us see. Okay, and it's really coming from the big, not just pressure, but the big scape of landscape of things today. Cybersecurity persona needs to look into today, and really, once we had VMs and blades, and we knew how to set up a firewall and stuff like that, and these systems are still living, okay, and security person needs to really go into take more on himself and learn other things like cloud native, okay, not just cloud native, but cloud native, and then Kubernetes, and I think that really there is no easy solution. Okay, I think that the most cybersecurity friends, I'm pretty sure that we are great professionals, and they have all the basics, and simply they have to take a few, take their time and learn it. Okay, and this, I think that especially Kubernetes and cloud native, they have a wonderful community with with really people who are ready to answer questions, and many places where you have resources, and you cannot cheat it. You have to dive in to that.
Yeah, I think that's probably one of the most important things. I think, like when you're talking about how mods is saying they're struggling with this, right? I mean, the wrong answer is to go on your own and try and do something bespoke because you think it's safer and secure. Like, herd mentality here is really important. We have so many active organizations and people promoting best practices in the cloud native space that you want to be going with them and standing on the shoulders of everyone else that's doing the hard work up front. And I think we're in a really exciting time now in the cloud native space where there has been a big push on security. We've got RMOSec pushing Kubescape. We've got ChainGuard doing all the image signing stuff with cosign. Like, we're never been in such a fortunate position in cloud native. I mean, if you think back to Kubernetes in 2017, 2018, like, wow, that was scary. Where we are now, I think people should be excited, hopefully. I feel that security experts should be excited.
Yeah, it's completely, and I think, and really, just there is something, okay, I want to mention something that came into my mind just after my answer. That but because if you think about all the progress we made, okay, in the last 5 to 10 years, okay, and the whole adoption of infrastructure as a code, okay, I think that there is really a new mindset, okay, for security personnel, okay, they have to adopt, okay, because the secrets in Kubernetes are not coming from I don't know, from the air, okay, they are coming from a Git repo, they are coming from a script, okay, which is which is stored in some kind of a bucket, okay, either it's be Git or something else, and this is not the time where we went through with our USB drives and started to distribute keys in the blades. So this is also a change of mindset, not just technicality.
Yeah, 100%. I sometimes look back at some of the things I used to do to distribute keys and secrets, and I'm just absolutely ashamed. All right, thank you for that question, Moz. Hopefully that helps. If you have anything more specific, please drop it into the chat. And we have a hey from Joshua. Hey Joshua, thank you for joining us. All right, Ben, you're going to guide us through a look at Kubescape today. So if you can get your screen share ready, we'll pop over there and we'll show the audience how cool this is.
Okay, wait a second. I'm just also, I need my technical half minute here.
Yeah, take all the time you need. No rush.
Yeah. So I don't know if you see my screen.
Let me pull that up now. We can. We see a terminal and you typing.
Awesome. So yeah, so we are on terminal. I think this is the best place we can be. Okay. So I just wanted to, really to give you an intro for those about Kubescape who haven't heard or your newbies for us. So again, you can find us in GitHub, RBAC Kubescape. You can see here our project. Now, within a project, okay, as I told you, the simplest, to start with Kubescape is simply installing our CLI tool. So our CLI, Kubescape is by default packaged as a CLI tool, and what it does is it scans either your cluster or your YAML files or HELM charts and looks for security issues within. So we talked about it before that we came from the world of of NSA. So what I meant by this is that we are organizing our what we call controls, which are something like tests. We are organizing them into frameworks. Okay, so think about it as groups. Okay, and we have this NSA framework containing multiple tests or controls, as you will. But we have other different frameworks, like we have the Microsoft MITRE framework, which is another approach, okay, other set of tests which was prepared from the security research team of Microsoft, and other sets which I will show you later. And what you can do is simply, download Kubescape with a single liner here. You can copy paste just as you saw it before, and install it. So right now, okay, we have more than one kind of application packaging of Kubescape. One is what you saw right now, the CLI tool, and later I will, if we'll have time, I will show also that we can install it as a cluster component. But the simplest thing, okay, you can do with Kubescape is simply write Kubescape scan, okay, and then what Kubescape does is it connects the Kube API from the current context which is configured, and simply looks into your configurations, your Kubernetes objects, and tests them against different tests. So in this case, okay, this is what it took to run the whole test. It was you can see that it was less than a minute, and you can see a list of different tests we've ran here, which again, what we call tests is in our language, it's called controls. And for example, okay, I can have, for example, here one test called container host port. So I'm telling you right now that container host port is a control which checks whether the host port was defined for a given deployment or workload. And you can see that there is a single resource which failed this best practice out of 19. And based on these results, okay, we are computing an aggregated risk score of your cluster, which in my case I just installed a Minikube here with a hipster shop application where I deliberately made some security big no-nos in order to be able to show you some of the good things. But just going back to what the output of the CLI is. So for example, there is another control called writable Hostpass Mount. Okay, so it means that it is really bad practice from a security perspective to mount Hostpass and also not just to mount Hostpass, but even to enable writing to that host path. So in this case, we found 4 workloads. Like we found kubeproxy uses Hostpass Mount. Okay, we see that etc is using it, kube controller manager, and storage provisioner. So it's kind of, you're asking yourself, wait, that's a little bit strange, okay, because these are Kubernetes components, okay, and why Kubescape is complaining about Kubernetes components, and this is an approach we took at the beginning, okay, because sometimes in security, okay, I think the best approach is not to hide things, okay, even though they are related to the system you're working in. So in our case, really, the kubeproxy requires a host path to be mounted, okay? Otherwise, in Minikube, it won't work, okay? But on the other hand, the control needs to list it, okay, because still this can be in some context, this can become an attack vector, okay, a theoretical attack vector. Therefore, we are listing it. We'll talk about a little bit later what we are going to do with it, okay? Because in Kubescape, it's very important for not just to show you, the dry results, but also to help you to work with them and solve your issues. So we'll get back to it, but I'm looking here back to other controls, other tests we've ran here. So I want to bring you, something more interesting. So we have this control called privilege container, okay, which is one of the most basic checks, I think some of you already smiling, I feel here, because this is one of the most basic tests, okay, on any security posture tool, okay, checking whether you have privileged containers or not in your environment. So in this case, you can see that there is a deployment in the hipster shop namespace called recommendation service, which again, for the sake of demonstrating the capabilities, okay, I've made it to a privileged container. Any questions? Just David, do you want to interrupt? Yeah.
Yeah, we have one question in the chat, but I'm going to be selfish and ask my own question first. So, awesome. If you scroll back down to your table, you present a bunch of risk percentage scores, and I was curious if you could help us interpret those.
Sorry, about what?
So it says, like, we have a risk score on the table of 100%, skipped 94, and I don't know if those correlate to the framework risks, which seem to be in yellow above it.
So yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So very good question. So we have a very differentiated risk score calculation. Okay. So what you see here, the risk score here means actually, the percent of failed resources on a given test. Okay, so in this case, you see that access container service account. Okay, this means that the container has access to the service account token. Out of 41 workloads, 41 of them has access to the service account token. Okay, this means that 100% have failed. Okay, but for example, let's take something with 0 and interesting enough here. I think that in this case, the access Kubernetes dashboard is not really interesting from our point of view because we don't have Kubernetes dashboard. But for example, pods in default namespaces, great. So in general, okay, this is best practice not to put pods in the default namespace. And as you know, as of all the pods in my cluster, okay, none of them are in the default namespace, therefore there is a risk of 0 here. And the correlation, okay, with these framework risks, okay, which you can see here, I have a 34.97% risk score of NSA. So it's a little bit more complex. It's not just a simple percentage of the calculation, okay, because I would be happy, by the way, to point you to documentation, but we don't have it yet about this calculation method. But I will try to explain you and prevent you from going into the code and reading it yourself. But the idea is as following. Okay, so we are trying to calculate risk. Okay, cumulative aggregated risk for the whole for framework for a whole cluster, based on what is the worst potential outcome. Okay, so for example, if you have like control A and B, and you have 5 resources for each, so we are creating a score of 100% in case that every resource on every of these controls is failing potentially. Okay, and also adding to the equation also the level of the given control, how the severity of the given control. So, for example, privileged container has relatively high risk, okay, and high severity. On the other hand, I don't know. Let's take cluster internet networking has a medium severity. So we are adding to the calculation all these things and creating this cumulative score. Okay, and again, we are taking the worst case based on your cluster. If all the controls are failing on all the resources, and that's the worst case scenario. So related to that, where are you on this scale? And yeah, I hope I could explain it.
Yeah, that definitely helps. Thank you very much. All right, Joshua's question from the chat. Joshua asks, is Kubescape able to run on managed Kubernetes solutions like EKS and GKE? Because some other security tools are not able to run since there's not, I guess, unrestricted access to the control plane.
Yeah, so definitely. So the answer is yes. Kubescape as a CLI tool is running today. We did some statistics on how many people are running, and we are seeing something like 30 to 40,000 Kubescapes runs a week, and and most of those clusters are managed Kubernetes clusters. So they're like, as you just said, EKS, GKE, AKS clusters, and also OpenShift and DigitalOcean clusters. Actually, Kubescape by default, it only uses the Kube API, and from anywhere where you have access to the Kube API, and right now, I have in this console, I have access to the Kube API, and I have the authentication credentials to it. If Kubescape can access the Kube API, it can scan your cluster.
Awesome, thank you. Yeah. All right, I'll let you go back to your demo.
Yeah, so just wanted to show you, and I hope that I have it here. Yeah, so I have this YAML file, okay, because which is I actually I hope I have the wget here. Yeah, so so what I wanted to show you, that just as I scanned the cluster, I can take my YAML file also, okay, before I'm deploying before I'm deploying it to the cluster, I can also scan it, not just the Kube API. So, and I think it was a it was a really important decision for us, okay, from way we've designed this architecture, okay, and the way we designed this whole project to give an answer, not just the actual deployment and monitoring a part of the things, but also what do you want to do beforehand? How do you want to prevent things, okay, going into your production? And I just run the scan on the YAML file, and you can see that I got the same table. Okay, so some of the controls are skipped because they are simply not relevant. I don't have inputs to those things because the YAML files doesn't contain relevant Kubernetes objects. But for example, I can already see, okay, that again, that I have here a component of workload which has host IPC privileges, okay, and this means that one of the workloads out of the 12 workloads which I had this in this YAML file is already failing here, okay. So for example, if I'm for example, for our production our own production SaaS CI/CD, okay, we already use Kubescape in the delivery pipes, and already looking into the things before they get to the production environment, and stopping pipes, okay, from delivering problematic things, like in this case this privilege container. And it is the very same privilege container you saw before in the cluster itself. So if you're thinking about a whole development process, and not just want to understand what you have right now in your cluster, okay, but you also want to add Kubescape into your whole work process, okay, you can use it. Okay, we've just this week, okay, someone decided to write a GitHub action, okay, based for Kubescape, and we'll have hopefully by next week you'll have a published GitHub action also facilitating this test, so you will be able to add Kubescape even easier to your pipes and your workflows, and you'll be able to prevent security misconfigurations even before.
I'm curious about what what a production pipeline might look like here. So you showed how Kubescape can reach the API server and do in-cluster stuff. We've also got the ability to run it in like a GitHub action context to prevent things ever getting to the cluster. I mean, should the GitHub action be able to block a deploy? Is that something that we would encourage for certain profiles or controls? And the end cluster stuff, is that something that we should be running regularly? Is it something we run all the time or just daily? Like, what would you suggest?
So definitely, okay. So I'm today I'm here as on one hand my heart is going for the security and cloud native community and development, but on the other hand I also I also VP engineering of a company, right? And this means that I need to monitor our flows and understand, okay, how to make them better, how to make our our processes better. And the idea of shifting left, okay, stopping things, stopping problems, catching problems very, very early, is really important. Okay, and we are really, really committed. Not just we are not just talking the talk. We are trying to walk the walk. Right? So we really mean that we want to integrate and bring this information as early as we can. And while I'm talking, although this is a relatively new machine, I'm trying to show you the same thing, even to make it more even interesting, in Visual Studio Code. So we also released Kubescape Visual Studio extension. And the reason for that, again, I'm installing here, and this is a live demo, so please, guys, please give me, just Slack, because hope it will work, because I haven't tried it right now before. So what we really try to see, to make sure that all these things are, coming with you from the very point of time where you start to write your YAML files, you wrote your Helm chart and stuff, okay, and going into the direction of your dev and staging and production systems, and just let's see, if it works. Okay, so hopefully, yeah, the scanning is working, but it should also show up also during, as you can see here.
Oh, nice.
Okay, so you can already see here that I'm already catching these issues right in your editor. So, sorry, not I. Okay, we are catching your issues. Sorry, but really, the point is here. Okay, that to answer your question, that there's no question. Okay, that you need to scan your production systems and monitor that. Okay, and maybe when we are as engineers are dealing with security requirements from our chief security officer in your organization, or you simply need to provide some input to your compliance preferred compliance type. You need to bring him information. You need to scan your cluster, okay, because this is actually what you have. But from a configuration perspective, I do believe that most of the things that can be caught before needs to be caught before. Okay.
Yep.
It's really, and I think it's really, really important. Also from a security perspective, so you will have security issues. Okay, in your clusters. Second is that it is way harder. Okay, to find these issues, far from you as a developer, and find them in the production system, okay, and you have access to that, and you start to scan until you understand how it works, instead of seeing it within your development environment.
Yeah, I'm going to follow up with one thing there, but I just want to, Avinash said hello in the chat, and then Avinash followed up with, hey, I'm also the person working on the GitHub action. So nice work, Avinash.
Yeah. Yeah, this is the great guy I was talking about.
What I like, what I really resonate with about what you said there is that we kind of in a really frustrating position in Kubernetes land, right? Like the Kubernetes maintainers and contributors made this decision to deprecate pod security policies. And the path that they pushed everybody down was, well, you should be using Kyverno or some other in-cluster tool to do mutating admission and validating admission, where you don't really know there's a problem until kube control apply or your GitOps operator starts failing. And by that point, you're like, right, well, what have I got to do to get this into my cluster,
exactly.
right? I want to be able to deploy it. And like the Kubescape comes at it with kind of a multitude of angles, but the most important one being, can I scan this at pull request time, get something that tells me, hey, this isn't actually going to be admitted to the cluster because of all these things, and then you can fix them as part of the pull request process. It makes things a bit easier for new developers or just people that aren't that familiar with this ecosystem and toolchain completely. Now, of course, you should still have validated admission controllers to block bad things getting in your cluster, But for the developer's perspective, you're right. We have to make this easier for them to learn these constraints and controls and how to write better manifests.
Yeah, completely. And beyond that, okay, what I wanted to show you that I don't know if you noticed, okay, in this case, and but okay, this is something, okay, that we also added pretty recently, okay, that you see that I'm not just saying that you have an issue within your deployment, okay, but also I can point you to the specific line of problem, okay, so I can explain you that, okay, and it connects you to what you said about the pull request, okay, and improving your pull requests and also Avi's action he's preparing, okay, GitHub action is preparing, that we really see this as part of a whole process, okay, so to catch the things and showing you, okay, that this is the line of problem, okay, this is what you need to check, or this is not what you need to say that, well, it's okay, but you need to create an exception, and we'll talk about it in a minute. What is an exception for us?
Awesome.
So
do you see a feature for this? Like I've got feature requests for you. So I think
awesome.
Like I want a little light bulb in VS Code to show up and actually just fix it for me. Like just as remediation, like, hey, you should just set this to false, or there you can modify your service to be a cluster IP, and like be able to guide people through how to make this better.
Yeah. So I don't know. It looks like we have premeditated these questions, but actually we haven't done. And yeah, this is something we are working as right now. We are also to the which if we are again within engineers. Okay, what we needed to do in order to have these highlights, okay, is actually telling you, okay, which part of the YAML file, which fields are related to this problem. And what you're saying is not just saying that, okay, here's the problem, but what the actual remediation is for that problem. And this is right now, we are working on this today, more or less.
Awesome.
And hopefully, I don't know when we'll have the light bulb, okay, because we have to add it also to the extension here, but the information will be there. And this whole the Kubescape is very, very transparent, okay, and the same output we are generating here can be taken, integrated into any other tool, okay, and but I wanted to tell you that this information is there, and also the fixed information is what with the light bulb is going to be there. So awesome. Hopefully really soon you will have it.
All right, we got a couple more comments there. So we have a ciao from Gianluca. You mate, how's it going? Long time no see. Moz is in with another great question. Moz is curious if there are any plans for Kubescape. Now, he's asked if you're going to create your own admission controller, but I'm curious if you plan to do that or whether provide policies for existing admission controllers. Is that something that you've thought about?
So yeah, we're thinking about it really hard, okay, because really we haven't talked about it yet, but I don't know if you guys are into it. Okay, I will be happy to talk about the controls themselves, which are written in Rego, and Kubescape was built on OPA engine.
Yep.
Okay, so we love it, and it's a great tool. And as you can see today, we have a big set of controls and tests around it, and we really think we are trying to understand, okay, what will take us to create an admission control. And I think that this is not really the question of the technicality of implementing the admission control API, but really we are trying to create an open source project which is useful, and having this full integration with our regos and rules and controls together, with Kubescape and this and the GitHub action and the VS Code, and together, okay, we have an admission control. I think that we're giving it a serious thought, but we want to make it right. So it's really important for us to make something that is usable and giving extra extra value, okay, for you guys, for the whole community.
Yeah, that's good. Really interesting to know that it's using OPA and Rego, because I guess now it's probably not too difficult to take some of those policies and deploy them to be consumed by Gatekeeper right off the bat, and being able to then provide, maybe someone in the community is watching and thinking, well, I use Kyverno, like, please go and start converting these to Kyverno policies as well. Like, we have the artifact hub, and I'd love to see all of these policies available to people regardless of admission controllers. That would be awesome.
Yeah. That would be great, really great. And you can see that beyond the Kubescape project in GitHub, we have this Rego library project, okay, where actually all the controls, you can see, okay, all the controls written here in Rego, and understand how you can understand how they work. I don't know. Let's take this. For example, the privileged pod, all right, whatever, or the hosted IPC privileges. So these are simply, Rego structures and queries. It's different. Actually, it's different from a little bit how Gatekeeper implemented things, because we really, you can see all these failed path and fixed path, all the things we've just showed you, that to show how the Regos are not just identifying the problem, but also telling you where the problem is and how to fix it. Therefore, these things that are Regos are a little bit different, okay? But still, you can, this is open source project, and as well with the same license, and this is what we're using in Kubescape. So anyone who's interested to to do something with us, or without us, but using this, let's say, is welcome.
Awesome. All right, we got a wave from Thomas Lav. I'll pop that back off, and I'll let you carry on with your demo. But this is really cool. I like this. I like what I'm seeing.
Yeah. Thanks. So this is really what Kubescape has a few new directions. Okay, and I'm also, David, I hope you agree, but I'm going to use this platform also to ask for more contributions here to join our community. But I wanted to show a few interesting things. Okay, so as I told you before, Kubescape is started from scanning your API server. Okay, so we connected the Kubernetes API, talked to the API server, got all these deployment and secret and service objects, okay, and told you what might go wrong with them. Now we understand that security is more complex, and security is way beyond only the API server information. Okay, all the things all the objects we can get from the API server, and we have at least three directions. Okay, we started already to go into. Okay, one is the hosts running the Kubernetes nodes. Okay, so we've created. You can see in our GitHub, we've created a project called host sensor, which is actually a high privileged daemon set, which we're installing during the scan on every Kubernetes node, and it collects information from the host, which is hosting the actual Kubernetes node. Okay, so we have access to the Linux kernel and to the environment which are running the Kubernetes node, and not just the API servers and the containers from inside. So, for example, in this case, where it can help us. Okay, so there are different controls, okay, which can leverage this information. Okay, so for example, I don't know if recall, I don't remember the exact name of the CVE vulnerability, which was in the kubelet, like 2 months ago or something, or 3 months ago in December. And in that case, okay, we as Kubescape, we couldn't detect whether the hosts are vulnerable, because in order to detect that, we also needed to understand what are the kernel configurations on that host. And it's not enough to read the kubelet version, which is available in node object of the API server. And also, beyond that, we've also looking into different, other different things, okay, in the host. For example, what is the version of, of your container runtime and stuff like that. And we collect this information, okay, and we leverage this information to tell you more about your security posture. Now, obviously, our host sensor itself is a high privileged container within the cluster, and therefore, what we are doing, we are installing it during the run, and right away after we collected the information, removing it. Okay, so this is a one-time thing in order to collect this information and tell you what can be your potential security problems. We are telling you about your host, but this is it. Okay, and then we remove it right away. Also, we have gone to the direction, and I'm going to open our documentation. We've also went into the direction of learning more of your cluster from the cloud provider. Sorry. So your cloud provider today, and therefore, this is why I think the question about whether Kubescape can scan your managed clusters was a great question, okay, because on the one hand, yeah, Kubescape can scan your cluster, okay, but on the other hand, many information in the Kubernetes parts of the Kubernetes control plane are hidden from you where you're running a managed Kubernetes cluster, right? So when you're running a GKE cluster on a EKS cluster, you don't see actually the API server pod, okay? And for example, if I'm returning here just for a second for the test results, you can see here that we have a control called PSP enabled, okay? Because in general, we believe that post security policy is an important security facility, although I know this is deprecated and it's going to be swapped out to something even better. But when we can only test whether PSPN is enabled using the Kube API when the API server is running as part of the Kubernetes cluster, and we can find the pod which is running the API server and look into its configuration. When it is a managed Kubernetes cluster, for example, EKS, okay, we don't have this information because we don't see the API server pods because this is something that AWS is taking care of. So in that case, okay, what we are doing is actually we are connecting. We have enabled lately in Kubescape to be able to access the API of the cloud vendor, detect which cluster we are running in, whether it's an EKS cluster or GK cluster, and talk to the API of the cloud vendor and find out whether PSP is enabled from the cloud vendor itself or whether etcd encryption is enabled. Also get information from the cloud vendor because this information is not available through the Kube API. So this is the second, the second angle, second data source, okay, beyond the host sensor I told you. And the third, which is coming out, in this month, is going to be vulnerability scan. We are going to take vulnerability scan information of your images in your cluster, and if they are available, and use them as as an additional information for writing controls, writing tests. For giving you an example, and I will stop here, okay, because I need to drink something. That for example, I give you for example, you have a cluster, okay, and let's say that you are a very, very security conscious DevOps engineer, and you are scanning your images for security vulnerabilities, right? But what do you do with the results? Okay, there are different, there are a lot of images with old base images, and you get every week you get a critical vulnerability, and sometimes it doesn't really help, okay, because it's it's more it's more like a fog, okay, because you have so many issues that you cannot prioritize by yourself. So what we decided to do as a practical step from Kubescape is to connect the vulnerability information with the information we learn from the Kube API. For example, you have two deployments. Okay, one deployment is connected to a load balancer. In case, let's say AWS, and then it's an application load balancer. And the second deployment is an internal deployment, okay, which is not doesn't have access from the outside world. So it's really clear that in case that the public-facing deployment has a critical vulnerability, is way more critical issue than if an internal application has a critical vulnerability. So us as security conscious people, if we want to start to fix things, obviously we have to start to fix with the public-facing workloads, okay? And this is what we're going to do in the next step of Kubescape. We're going to connect vulnerability information together with the Kubernetes information, and we'll try to give you actionable items, okay, things which are, we can say to you, like, dude, this is something you have to solve now, or this is more important than all the others. And now I'm going to sip a little soda.
Yep, you grab a drink. All right, audience, if you have any questions, I mean, we've covered a lot so far about the different integration points for Kubescape. Ben has also shared some really cool things that seem to be coming down the pipe, which I'm very excited about as well. But if you have any questions for anything that we haven't answered yet, feel free to drop them into the comments before we finish up, and we'll do our best to answer them. All right, feeling better, Ben?
Yeah, I'm way better. So what I wanted to show you, okay, is actually, the Kubescape hosted the SaaS version, okay, the graphical version of the results, okay, which you can take together with you. So you can go to Portal Armo Cloud, where we are hosting, okay, our Kubescape UI. You can sign up, with your favorite social login on this site. And what you can do, you can stream here your results into this environment. And I'm rerunning the same Kubescape Scan command here. Just in this case, okay, I've added my account ID, so I'm uploading it to my bucket, and I can open right now the results here, which should be here within a minute, and I can monitor my cluster, in a constant manner. Okay, if we have here this mini cube, which I've just set up. In this case, and I can see, okay, all the controls. Okay, you saw also in the CLI before. You can see here, the different frameworks which we are running. You can see the MITRE framework, the NSA framework. You can see here we have created a framework of our own, which we call ArmoBest, which contains, I think, the most important controls you should be running. And what I like to do here, okay, is really just looking by severities. Okay, I like to see, okay, my issues, and I see that there are no failed controls here. But for example, okay, I have here a high severity issue with this privileged container, and again, this is the same results you could see in the CLI, and you can see here actually the results themselves, and with in the same UI, you can get here also the same information. Okay, that what is the problem in the YAML file? Okay, you need to solve here. Okay, so again, very important. Okay, to give to the Kubescape users, okay, information to to help to solve the problems, okay, they are having in their environment. And you can also, there is something, okay, I wanted to show here that I think is really important. Okay, because if you remember, I told you that we can see here two privileged containers, right? You can see an application, okay, called recommendation service, and the namespace called hipster, right? And you can see here also another called kubecroxy. I think all those who are viewing this stream, okay, you already heard about this, and it sits in the Kubescape kube system namespace. And again, you can see here that, for example, in this case, we are giving the users, okay, a light bulb you've just asked, that that we are recognizing that this is usually a common failure. Okay, this test is usually failed because kubeproxy is, as of today, by design, it's a privileged container. It needs to run as a privileged container. Yep. But what you can do here, okay, you can click here or here, okay, and create what we call an exception. Okay, we can say that, well, I understand that this workload has failed, but next time I don't want to see it as a failed workload, okay, because I understand, I accept that this is how it works, okay, and I, as this DevSecOps or DevOps engineer running this environment, I understand that this should be like this, okay, and I don't want this to affect my risk score, okay, because I want to see my risk without that. And in this case, next time, okay, when we are going to run Kubescape, okay, we'll simply want to see, okay, this failure with the kube proxy. And the same goes, okay, for other. So I can create an exception for the whole namespace for a given control or only for a given workload. And this, through this, we are creating a workflow for those who are reviewing clusters and want to somewhat accept or create an exception for specific workloads or namespaces. Obviously, this is also supported within our CLI, just a little bit more messy to show it. So I hope you forgive me that I show this way. Up until now, everything is okay?
Yeah, great. Very cool. I'm curious about the ARMO best. Like, this security landscape in Kubernetes is a continually evolving ecosystem. There's new CVEs all the time and new security practices. Like, there's a certain level of fatigue that a DevOps operator or SRE could get from trying to constantly fight all these different vulnerabilities, but while still allowing their development and their application teams to be productive and increasing their velocity. Like, is ARMO best a kind of opinionated way to try and minimize that fatigue?
Yeah, so yes. First of all, I don't have good news, okay, for all those who have fatigue, okay? Things won't be much better, okay? And you're right, okay, we are trying to get our not just going after the NSA and MITRE recommendations, but we are trying to create our own recommendation package, okay? But in for this fatigue part, okay, and I can totally relate, to your question, okay, that we are trying to battle this overwhelming stream of vulnerabilities and issues and information by trying to build an open source project, okay, which can give you enough contextual information that you will be able to handle most of the things automatically. Okay, so or at least we are able to. Now, I'm not saying to decide everything for you as an SRE or a DevOps engineer, but give you the most you can have in a single pane of glass. Okay, so you can can make as much less time on this as you can. Okay, and not to relate, not to stay too much around these issues. Okay, because in general, okay, this is really hard. It's really hard. Okay, and everyone understands that security, not just in Kubernetes. Okay, in the modern world, security is hard for everyone. But I do think that Kubernetes is a great way, okay, and a great project, okay, which really security gives the most it can to security-minded people and help them with that.
Yeah, I guess another way to phrase this would be, if you want a secure system, just turn it off. If that's not an option, then use these tools, use the ARMO best as a guidance and a compass. But I think what's really important, and paraphrasing you still here, but like it's going to depend company to company, right? Like, there is no gold star for what security posture is within your organization. You really have to just understand what's going on in the software and then make those judgment calls yourself, which I think is really important for people to understand.
Yeah, but again, okay, so think about it just a little bit for today. Okay, so today, like I think that we had in the Kubernetes security community, we had two security issues in the past month. Okay, so again, I'm not good by remembering numbers. I know it's quite funny from someone who's working in this industry, but you had one big issue with Argo CD, okay, a directory traversal issue, okay, which could be exploited by, if you have Argo CD in your environment and you're using some malicious chart, okay, or Git repo, okay, to pull your stuff from. Then someone can steal data from your cluster. And the second was a container escape vulnerability in the Linux kernel, which was reported more than a month ago. And in both cases, okay, so these were great cases, I think, to understand, okay, that how complex these things are. Because, okay, first of all, if you don't have Argo CD in your Kubernetes cluster, okay, then great, okay, most likely you're not affected by this issue, okay. But Argo CD is a great tool, and it's going into more and more clusters. So many people were thinking, well, I do have a vulnerable Argo CD version. What do I do now? So the next step is simply to start, on the one hand, update Argo CD, and the other hand, you have to check whether you've been affected. Have you been? What are the lists of helm charts or GitHub Git repositories you've been pulling from? And there it starts to be really hard, okay, because you have to go understand if you're managing one cluster, you may be able to do even two, but like 3, 4, 5, and tens or even hundreds of developers, this can start to become very, very, very hard. The same goes for the Linux kernel container escape issue, okay, because it was even harder because everyone who uses Kubernetes most likely is running it on Linux kernels. So Linux kernels are even more common than Argo CD. So you cannot say that, well, I don't have Linux kernel, therefore I'm fine. And you start to have update your kernel, which is a pain. It's a real pain. Okay, so it's really, really hard. Okay, even when you're running managed clusters, and you start to have a look at, okay, what is the attack angle? Okay, how an attacker can get to this. And there, the privileged containers comes into the play, okay, because privileged containers were more vulnerable to this. I can actually tell you that even if you're looking into the container landscape, okay, actually, other container orchestrators, okay, which we are right now not calling by their name, were less vulnerable, okay, to this container escape than actually the Kubernetes, because Kubernetes was disabling seccomp by default, and others weren't. So, and this had an effect. So it's really, really hard, and really, really hard to understand, all these small things. And therefore, I think that going forward, the only way we can handle these things and not be overwhelmed is to connect more and more information, and somehow replicate the security, all those people who understand security really well and understand Kubernetes really well, and let them code this knowledge into some regular rule or something like that, and enable others simply just to take this information and get whether they have problems, or get an answer yes or no whether they have problems or not. That's my take.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing that. That was great.
So another thing, okay, I wanted to show you, okay, and again, live demo. I'm sorry. So we have our own image scanning facility. Okay, you can install in your cluster. So I'm going to for that, what we are doing is we are installing Kubescape and other Kubescape components into your cluster with Helm. And this will do two things. One is will enable you to scan your images in your cluster every day. And the second thing it does, it also scans your Kube API, just as you saw before, in a constant manner. So in other words, if you like Kubescape and want to work with it in a permanent manner, okay, and wait a second, do I have Helm here? What a mess. What a mess.
Next. Nice.
Yeah, we got to this at the end. Wow, no.
Yeah, on Arch Linux, Helm is Helm-bin. Helm is actually something else.
Oh, well.
A dash-bin, sorry.
Dash-bin, sorry.
It may be an AUR. Do you have an AUR package manager?
AUR, I'm not
like
sure.
Like or something.
Pretty new machine.
Oh.
And haven't been able to start to set up things here. So yeah, this is the but let me get back, okay, because we have enough data. Okay, so let's for example, let's say that we have installed, okay, this Helm chart, okay, in our cluster, okay, and you will have daily scans, okay, of your, in this case, for example, in this GK cluster, when you can see the progress of your cluster day by day, and not just that, but we're starting to have image vulnerability information from your cluster. So we are installing our vulnerability scanner inside your cluster. We are scanning every workload, looking for image vulnerability issues. For example, I want to see only critical problems, for example, with RCEs, and I can see that, for example, in the same recommendation service we've seen before, which had which was a privileged component. Okay, I can see here that it also have, a CVE with critical vulnerabilities, although it's not an RCE. Having said it is a problem. So again, this is something you're relatively new, okay, and we are still working on it and working it more interesting. But in order for you to understand that, we are adding more and more information input to this system to have a more interesting, results and more helpful results for you. Another thing is our RBAC visualizer, which was started as a pet project for one of us here, and we said to ourselves, well, guys, RBAC in Kubernetes, which is really today important part of Kubernetes security, because every modern cluster uses RBAC authorization for it. It is great, but it's a mess. It's really hard to handle. Okay, so what we've decided is simply create a visualization for what you have for your in your cluster, what you see in your RBAC. So in this case, what you can see here a service account, okay, called kubesystem. Kubesystem default service account of the kubesystem namespace, which is bound to the cluster admin role, okay, which is obviously it's a pretty high privileged role, okay, in Kubernetes, which is actually the highest privileged role. And you can see that also there is another group connected to the same role, okay, which is called system masters group, and they have access to every resource. You can see here the asterisk. It can execute every verb on every resource, okay, in this cluster. So we can see how the mapping of the what we call the administrator is happening, okay. But on the other hand, okay, we can start to here look up more interesting thing. Okay, we can know that who has access to Kubernetes secrets. So who can do get on secrets, okay, and asking who can perform. So you're getting a graph, okay, of all the roles and cluster roles in the environment who have access to resource secret, okay. you can see here that on the one hand, where is our basic admin role? I forgot, I don't see it for now. But for example, we have different roles. Let's try to lay out by type. Okay, we can see here that in the middle, we can see here all the roles, and we can see all the subjects, okay, bound to those roles here. Okay, we can see here that we have a user called Kube Controller Manager, because obviously a built-in user in Minikube, and it is bound to this role called Kube Control Manager, which has update, get, delete, and create authorization over Kubernetes secrets. Okay, and I don't remember if I have here something more interesting, but let's take another query. Okay, for example, we've made some pre-built queries. For example, who can exec into pods? Okay, execution into pods. Okay, it's an important thing. Okay, to control, and we can see here. Okay, that the only one who can do it is the cluster admin. So we are more or less fine. Okay, but for example, if there was some kind of a project which introduces its own authorizations into the system, okay, we see here many interesting things, because for example, we've been talking with a lot of users, and they said that they started to play around, okay, with this RBAC visualizer, and it turned out that they found out that different RBAC and authorizations were there in their system, which they didn't know about before. So it's really important. Okay, so also to know what are the kind of authorizations you are having in your system, and RBAC visualizer is a great way to start to understand what do you have in your environment. Yeah, I'm going to stop here also for taking questions.
That is the coolest and most important thing I've seen in a while, the RBAC visualizer. Like, see, when we're talking about exploring Kubernetes clusters, like everything in the cluster is primarily two-dimensional, and kube control get is fine. RBAC, on the other hand, because we've got namespace objects, cluster-based objects, we've got the aggregation layer for doing, groupings of certain permissions. You can't, well, at least it's very difficult to understand who has access to what they can do. Now, of course, you can use kube control auth to AMI and get a scope thing from an individual user, but being able to look at that across an entire cluster, this visualizer is just amazing. Like, whoever built this is now my new hero. This is amazing.
Yeah. I'm going to. I think that it's simply a great. It was a wonderful idea. Okay, and the credit needs to go also to Yusuf and the team from the Ankara University who helped us to build it, because they did an awesome job on this. Okay, they coming from the graph theory direction. And I think that they made a really great tool here. And I just switched to another cluster because my Minikube was pretty boring. But for example, okay, in this case, okay, you can see that in let's try who can. Let's try to pre-made query. Okay, who can execute into pod? So we found so many interesting things. For example, which Google installs. Okay, in this case, okay, you can see that not just cluster admin has access to executing into pods, but also there is a GK common webhooks user with the cluster role GK common webhooks cluster role, which also have access to executing into pods. And yeah, this is great to understand how things are working around.
Yeah, for sure. What I like about Kubescape here, I don't know if this is a phrase or not in the Kubernetes security industry, but Kubescape seems like it's a full spectrum tool. Like, we've looked at misconfiguration, we've looked at image scanning, there's the RBAC visualizer, we have the integration with all these security frameworks. It is really tackling the security thing from all the different angles that people have to be concerned about with their Kubernetes clusters. And I think that's really important. That single tool can deliver, like you said in the marketing message and the GitHub repository, a single pane of glass for Kubernetes.
Yeah, yeah. And yeah, again, so I'm not trying to say that we've solved all the problems. Okay, we are far from them. Okay, and we are also, we are trying to make something really, something really new and very, very useful. Okay, and therefore, if anyone who's here, okay, and want to be involved in the project, okay, we are welcoming. We have a great Discord channel, and also our GitHub is very busy, so we really invite anyone who wants to join us in the journey, okay, and creating this great open source tool to join our ranks.
All right, should I move back over to just video mode? Are we done with the demonstration for today?
Yeah, we are more or less done. Yeah, sorry.
Awesome, sweet. I'll make sure to include links to the Discord and the GitHub repository in the show notes. We do like to encourage people. People are always watching these videos and asking how can they be involved. So it's great that Kubescape is actively looking for people to come and, I guess, provide suggestions, documentation and code and just talk, right? The Discord server is there for people to share their stories about security.
Completely.
Awesome.
Yeah, it's really important. Really important. I think that the feedback is sometimes, I know it's it's a little bit funny to hear, but sometimes the feedback can even go further than the actual code itself. It can be so important to understand, okay, how the people are using and Kubescape and what are their problems and how they want to, how we can solve another problem they haven't, they have, which is related, or how we did things wrong, okay? Because sometimes we might do something which wasn't, we didn't do it right, and we need to fix it. So any input is good input.
All right. Last question for you. I forgot to ask during the demo because the RBAC visualization thing just struck me as awesome. But is anything that you've shown us paid for? Is this all free?
So everything I've shown you is free. Okay. Even our self version is free. Okay. We have a limitation of nodes which can be seen on the ARMA website. Okay, that we have a limitation of nodes, okay, obviously because this can be a lot of data to handle for us. But actually, Kubescape is free, and the CLI tool is free. It's going to be is still going to be free forever, and hopefully, fingers crossed. But we've submitted Kubescape for CNCF sandboxing, and on the 8th of March, okay, the TOC will sit on it, and hopefully will accept Kubescape as a CNCF project. So will become a CNCF project hopefully very soon.
Well, that would be great. You have my +1 non-binding vote for that. All right, Ben. Awesome. Thank you for joining us today. I hope everyone has liked what they've seen from Kubescape, from integrating it into GitHub Actions to running it on the command line to a very cool web UI and the amazing RBAC visualizations. So go check it out, join the Discord, and be active in the GitHub. Any last words, Ben?
No, thank you, guys. It was great for being here. Again,
all right.
Thank you.
Well, have an awesome day. Thank you for sharing that demo with us, and I'll speak to you again soon. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you for watching Rawkode Live.